So there's a version of Jeffrey Epstein and the story about him that you already know. It goes like this. There's a hedge fund financier with a private island who preyed on teenage girls, flew a parade of powerful men on his jet, got a laughingly lenient plea deal from a U.S. attorney who was friendly in Florida, and then died in a federal detention center before he could ever even face a jury. The names that surface in this story are familiar. Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Les Wexner, Alan Dershowitz. The headlines have already all been written. The documentaries have or are already in the making. There's over 1.4 million files on Jeffrey Epstein, from the DOJ disclosures to the FBI confidential source reports to the grand jury transcripts to internal emails. But they all tell actually a different story, bro. It's a story that the mainstream coverage has barely even touched. And it runs from the 12th floor of Leslie Wexner's building in Manhattan through a compound in New Mexico, into the boardrooms of the Rothschild banking dynasty and across to the Sinaloa cartel's killing fields. It goes past the membership roles of the Trilateral Commission and the Council of Foreign Relations, through a new proposal for a new Rosicrucianism, and ends with a young girl buried behind the 19th hole of a Donald Trump golf course. I hope you're ready for this story because we're about to go deep. Okay, you can understand the empire. You have to understand the document that made it untouchable. On September 24th, 2007, Jeffrey Epstein signed a non-prosecution agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. On the surface, it was a lenient deal. Epstein would plead guilty to 2 state prostitution charges. He would serve 18 months in a county jail with work release, and the federal government would not prosecute him for child sex trafficking. But the agreement contained a clause that transformed this from a controversial plea deal into something that's super, super dark. It extended immunity to any potential co-conspirators. It didn't even name them. It didn't limit how many of them there can be. It covered everyone, past, present, and future. The agreement mentioned only 2 women by name, Sarah Kellen and Nadia Marcinkova. But the language opened the door for the entire network. 5 DOJ officials signed it, including Deputy Attorney General Mark Flipp and the head of the criminal division, Alice Fisher. The very people whose job it was to prosecute Epstein had agreed to immunize his entire enterprise. The man who negotiated that language? Yeah, it was Dershowitz, the Harvard law professor who defended O.J. Simpson and wrote the Starr report that impeached Bill Clinton. A later court filing from the Edwards versus Dershowitz case alleges that Dershowitz was not merely a legal advisor, but an eyewitness to the sexual abuse of minors by Epstein, and that his legal work for Epstein effectively immunized him from prosecution of his own involvement. 30 victims were known at the time. None of them were told about the agreement until it was signed. Assistant U.S. Attorney Dexter Lee later wrote that the victims were thus not told that the USAO had entered into a non-prosecution agreement with Epstein until after it was signed. The agreement itself contained a provision that reads like a confession in its own impropriety. Why is it saying James Patterson? Interesting. The parties anticipate that none of this will be a part of any public record. It is also required that the government notify Epstein before responding to any FOIA requests, meaning that Epstein had the right to block public access to the government that let him walk. What the fuck, bro? But here's what I keep coming back to. If Alan Dershowitz wrote the language that immunized any potential co-conspirators and a sworn court filing alleges that he was an eyewitness to the abuse, then who else was protected by those words that we still don't know about? Who do you think was the real target of the blanket immunity clause? Do you think that it was a person? Do you think that it was a country, president, a group of people? Jeffrey Epstein did not simply collect powerful friends. He collected memberships in the most elite, invitation-only institutions on the planet. And the files reveal that he was obsessed with the idea of secret societies, both real and the imagined ones. Epstein was a member of the Trilateral Commission and the Council of Foreign Relations, 2 of the most exclusive and influential policy organizations in the world. His official biography, found in multiple documents, lists him as a member of the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, the New York Academy of Science, and the former Rockefeller University board member. What? Right there. It's right there on the Institute of International Education. Mr. Epstein is a member of the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, the New York Academy of Science, and a former Rockefeller University board member. He's also active in the Santa Fe Institute Theoretical Biology Initiative at the Institute of Advanced Study, the Quantum Gravity Program at the University of Pennsylvania. It also sits on the Mind and Brain and Advisory Committee at Harvard. He has philanthropic affiliations, include both the Wexner Foundation and COUQ Foundation. What the hell, bro? He was also actively involved in the Academy of, he was also actively involved, like I said, in the Santa Fe Institute. It's pretty crazy. It's a pretty long rap sheet, right? It seems to me as if this motherfucker was connected everywhere. Maybe we can get, make a little connections to these like secret societies and these elite groups that are to control the planet and make decisions that affect everybody, bro. What about this one? Oh, it's the same thing. The Trilateral Commission membership list from 2003 in April found in the Epstein files reads like a who's who of global power. There's Henry Kissinger, Madeleine Albright, Vernon Jordan, Paul Wolfowitz, David Gergen, Richard Holbrooke, Carla Hills, George Soros Associates, the Betchel family, Conrad Black, Stanley Fisher, John Bryan, which is the CEO of Sara Lee. There's more. There's more. There's more of them. There's more. There's Jorgen Fichstein, which is the Deutsche Bank, the CEOs of Xerox, Kodak, and Coca-Cola. More and more and more. So many names of all these people. But Epstein's interest in secret societies went deeper than membership in policy councils. An email from January 11th, 2015, forwarded to Epstein from a woman named Michelle Riley, opens a window into the kind of thinking Epstein entertained. Responding to Epstein's request for fun projects, Riley wrote, "What about a new Rosicrucianism of sorts? Like a Jejune Institute style blurred reality fiction negging of your enemies would be pretty damn fun. What are your thoughts about funding and constructing your own intelligence agency?" What the fuck, bro? Your own intelligence agency? Like Jeffrey Epstein's very own CIA? Crazy. The Rosicrucians are one of the oldest esoteric secret societies in Western history, an occult order that claims roots in ancient mysticism and has fascinated conspiracy theorists for centuries. The proposal for the new Rosicrucianism, combined with funding a private intelligence agency, was set to a convicted sex offender who had been investigated for trafficking, bro. You can just go ahead and drop "We got this, Team Human" in the comments if you can, bro, because this shit gets deep, homie. Okay, so Riley suggested an exclusive silence sort of thing at a place like Esalen, or maybe on Little St. James, Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, for experimentation with philosophers and scientists examining physiological stuff while considering artificial intelligence estopimology. The same email concluded with, "High-profile island orgies also independently come to mind, but I have a strong suspicion that you already have that covered." Disgusting. Disgusting. And the FBI files revealed that Epstein's little black book, as described by a confidential human source, contained annotations that go beyond, described as a 95-page photocopy with names, the word "witness" handwritten next to them, and 2 handwritten pages listed things like John Luke Brunel, scout for young females, Secret Service personnel escorting Mr. Mr. Ehud Barak, which is the Prime Minister of Israel, on Jeffrey Epstein's page. Pages 93 and 94 listed 35 female names, only individuals under visitor's massage in Palm Beach. Dang. A source wrote directly to prosecutors, "I suspect Robert, Ghislaine, and Jeffrey were all Mossad agents trying to blackmail leaders." Whoa, this is getting crazy, huh? Blackmail leaders into political and the financial world. The source noted at the end of Epstein's second black book, an organizational chart details his East 65th Street operation with potential co-conspirators and the physical location of the apartment for models. Let's see here. Where is this apartment for models? Is it in New York? Is it the one that Candace is talking about, bro? Because I don't, on this specific document, it's on East 65th Street. Oh yeah, that's the address for his little place. Dang. Same document chain reveals that a researcher had built a huge file with everyone that knew about Epstein and did nothing, and mentioned Operation Mockingbird, the CIA's infamous domestic propaganda program, in connection with the cover-up. Crazy. Paraguay, that's a country, right? Interesting. Epstein cultivated mystery. Like magazine profiles found in the files described him as a mysterious man without attachment. He had no wife. He had no children. He had no boss. Yet he attracted all these rich and powerful famous people. One reporter noted, "He is this mysterious Great Gatsby figure. He likes people to think that he is very rich, and he cultivates them cultivates this air of aloofness." In his Paris apartment, 10,000 square feet on Avenue Foch, there was a stuffed baby elephant in his living room, and the single book on his bedside, Lolita, a paperback copy of the Marquis de Sade, The Misfortunes of Virtue, that was spotted on his desk. Weird, bro. Why would he have like baby elephant? That's what I don't get. I mean, I understand. I do understand. You know what I mean? So if someone proposed like a new Rosicrucianism on his private island, Epstein organized a chart in his little black book mapping his operation, and he kept like items or totems from this operation. Was this like a performance or a calculated thing that was to make people afraid of what they did not know, bro? Or was Epstein actually running something that looked like a secret society more than it was actually like a trafficking ring? What do you think really happened on Little St. James? Do you think that the temple was like part of a secret society and like a religion? And that's like what the temple is? Or do you think he was just like a weird pedophile that was just into weird things and had interests? I don't know. So here's where we get to the 12th floor, the 12th hole, bro. The empire of control, the 12th floor. The operation itself was not merely a trafficking ring. It was a surveillance and intelligence apparatus disguised as a social network. A witness statement in the files describes the inner workings of Les Wexner's Victoria's Secret empire and Epstein's role inside of it. Wexner, the billionaire founder of L Brands, who had given Epstein power of attorney over his financial affairs, ran a compound where often Wexner would have models who could not have been over 18 years old due to private viewings for him and Epstein. The models wore swimsuits. Some of them were in lingerie. Then there was the 12th floor of Leslie Wexner's building. Nobody was allowed to go in there. No one could explain why. A witness described an incident where she and another stylist were dressing mannequins with bras and panties spread across the floor. While they were bent over, it felt like someone was watching them. They stood up and turned around, and Epstein and Wexner were standing there watching them. Wexner asked if that's what their rooms had looked like. The same witness said that there were pictures of all the models who went to the houses of Wexner and Ed Razak, the late Victoria's Secret marketing executive, with contact information. And at every party, there was always a woman who she did not know that was around and seemed to be in charge of all the models. Dang, was that Erica Kirk, bro? Crazy. I don't know. It doesn't give the name in the files, bro, but it's kind of crazy that Candace is talking about this, bro. Now, if you've seen the disposition that Leslie Wexner did, bro, you know that Wexner, just like all of the rest of them, just like Bill Gates is doing right now, he claimed that he was a victim of Epstein's deception. But if he was a victim of Epstein's deception, bro, how are there just so many connections to all of this stuff, bro? Okay, so this is where the trail of breadcrumbs moves the runway into the world of dynastic finance, and where the documents reveal a relationship that the headlines just seem to have missed. On one afternoon, on May 27th, 2010, Jeffrey Epstein was emailing furiously from his BlackBerry. Y'all remember those weird-ass keyboard phones before we had these iPhones and these Googles and Samsungs? He had heard that a man named Kenneth Starr, not the independent counsel who investigated Bill Clinton, but a different Kenneth Starr, a New York financial advisor who had been arrested. Starr, Epstein wrote, was Lady Rothschild financial advisor. And Starr, Epstein claimed, told the IRS that she had done some naughties. What? I'm told with certainty that Mr. Kenneth Starr was Lady Rothschild's financial advisor in the past, and he has told the IRS that she has done some naughties. What the fuck does that mean? You've done some naughties. The Lady Rothschild in question was connected to the Rothschild dynasty, bruh. And Epstein was tracking a financial scandal involving the family. He instructed his contacts to feed the story to Sharon Churcher at the Daily Mail and to the News of the World. He named the company at the center of it First Mark Holdings, Inc., advised by Kenneth Starr, with Harry Kissinger and Conrad Black as directors. One of Epstein's correspondents replied with a telling detail. First Mark was the thing she asked me to become a director of with Black Kissinger. Right here, boom. Because she had done some naughties. Crazy! So it seems as if Epstein was not just connected to the Rothschild, he was inside their financial machinery, bro. 3 years later, the relationship even got more personal. In September 2013, Epstein was exchanging emails directly with Ariane de Rothschild, the wife of Baron Benjamin de Rothschild, a central figure in the Rothschild banking dynasty. The correspondence is warm, familiar, and densely packed with high-level introductions. Ariane wrote to Epstein, "Dear Jeff, Oliver is to coordinate these various meetings with you, but when will I see you?" Epstein replied with the list. Ehud Barak, Jess Staley, Josh Romo. Let's schedule. Ehud Barak, like I said before, is the former Prime Minister of Israel and Minister of Defense. Jess Staley is the CEO of Barclays. Josh Ramo is the former editor of The Time magazine and Kissinger's business partner. They scheduled breakfast at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse on September 23rd, 2013 at 9:15 a.m. 4 days later, she invited him to dinner at her home in Paris, 10 Rue des Elysées, in the 8th arrondissement. After that breakfast, Ariane wrote, "Dear Jeff, it was great to see you yesterday. I await you Friday in Paris." Epstein replied with a characteristic opacity. "I prefer settings which allow a quiet, sincere exchange of ideas. Sorry for the schedule screw up." He also tried to set up a meeting that connects the Rothschilds to the highest level of international finance. Summers and Barack meeting on Saturday. Any thoughts? He's asking Ariane de Rothschild for her input on a meeting between Larry Summers, the U.S. former Treasury Secretary, and Ehud Barak. She responded with a detailed business proposal for how Summers could work with her bank. Bro. On June 20th, 2013, Epstein wrote to Ariane directly, "Would you find it amusing to share dinner with Woody Allen and wife? He's filming again in France and will be staying with me." She had written to him earlier that same day, "Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me. I truly appreciate it, as you well know how few people do so and have the courage of their opinions. Please let me know when you next come to Paris and we'll continue our discussions with a good bottle of Bordeaux." But the darkest document in the Rothschild thread on this is October 17th, 2013. Epstein wrote to one of his contacts, "Can you travel to Europe for 2 or 3 weeks to be the person for the Rothschild family?" The recipient, whose name is redacted, replied, "Is this Lynn from Palm Beach years ago?" Epstein corrected her. "No, Ariane Rothschild." Dang. The woman in response seemed as if she's kind of giddy, right, bro? She's like, "Okay, this opportunity is so perfect, dear Jeffrey. I wish I could hug you." Another version of the same exchange that says, "Yes, when? Please call me as soon as you can." A full year later, on November 3rd, 2014, the same woman wrote to Epstein a year later, "My Ariane B, interested in my help now?" And then there's another one. Sorry, let me go here. "She's coming Saturday to New York," he says. Epstein, a convicted sex offender who had already served time for procuring minors for sex, who was recruiting and placing women in positions inside the Rothschild family personal staff. The woman's own question is this Lynn from Palm Beach years ago? Suggests this was someone from Epstein's Palm Beach network, where his recruitment for underage girls was centered. It seems a lot more dark and deep and complex than what we've been led on to believe. If you know anything about the Rothschilds or heard the word Rothschild, you've probably associated with them with like the Illuminati or like secret societies, bro. They're just like the oldest banking system in the world. And there's a few countries on the planet that don't have a Rothschild central banking system. Now here's a little part of the Epstein stuff that you may not have known. Team Humans in the chat if you are here, or if you might be seeing this later. So the Rothschilds represent the legitimate face of Epstein's network, but the documents also reveal an underworld dimension that is far, far darker, bro. An FBI confidential human source report from November 2017, classified secret/non-foreign, describes Epstein's compound in New Mexico where he lured and video recorded underage women. He had a private island. The source described Epstein as President Vladimir Putin's wealth manager, who provided the same service for Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe. Dang. The same source reported that Epstein employed a personal hacker, an Italian citizen born in Calabria who developed zero-day exploits and offensive cyber tools. This individual established the Saudi government's cyber surveillance program and sold a zero-day exploit to Hezbollah. He was the first person to hack and find vulnerabilities in BlackBerry and iOS. That's crazy as fuck. What the fuck, bro? Hezbollah, bro? So wait a second. Jeffrey Epstein is described as Vladimir Putin's wealth manager, who is also hiring a hacker that also established the Saudi Arabia's government, their cyber surveillance program, who also sold this same platform to Hezbollah. This was also the first person that hacked and was able to find vulnerabilities in BlackBerries and in iOS. It seems like they're all pretty connected, bro. Can we just get some "it's all connected"? Get a little head count. We got 4 over here, 11 over here, 9 over here. What's up, Team Human? I love you guys so much. Thank y'all for being here right now live. Thank you if you're here seeing this later. Epstein was running a private cyber intelligence operation alongside his sex trafficking operation. And that operation had tentacles into state-sponsored hacking, Middle Eastern intelligence, and the highest levels of Russian financial power. Then there is the Sinaloa cartel connection. An FBI intake report dated June 21st, 2021. The document is a tip from a source who claimed to have been part of the Sinaloa cartel and who worked closely with Epstein and Maxwell. The source stated he was able to walk away from the cartel due to his status with Epstein and Maxwell. What the fuck? Most of the time, you're not even you can't leave that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? You don't leave ever, bro. You're connected for life, bro. So one of the most violent drug trafficking organizations on earth walked away from the cartel, not by flipping on them, not by being killed, not by running away, but because of his association with Epstein and Maxwell, gave him protection that the cartel respected. Shit, dude. That's a heavy hitter right there, homie. Okay, says here, The same source had recordings of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell discussing marketing strategies for high-profile sex parties at Donald Trump's golf course. He had mailed those recordings to a lawyer in the Cayman Islands. On the recordings, Trump stated he was aware of the underage sex parties and charged the house money of the golf course to fund the sex parties. That's fucked up. The most chilling detail in this intake report is at the end. The tipster witness, Robin Leach, the young famous British journalist and the host of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, strangle a young girl during a sex party. He claims she is buried beneath the 19th hole at the Donald Trump golf course. That's fucked up, bro. The report also notes the source is aware of 3 separate occasions in which girls were, at the end of the page, ends there. Dude, a Sinaloa cartel member walked away from the cartel because Epstein's name protected him. And the same source claims that a body is buried in a specific location on a former president, current president's golf course, bro. The FBI actually logged this June 21 of 2021. Do you think anybody looked behind the 19th hole? I don't know, bro. Seems pretty insane, bro. This is the section where we talk about Mossad. It says that one source wrote directly to prosecutors that I suspect Robert Ghislaine and Jeffrey were all Mossad agents trying to blackmail the politician in the financial world, right? And then we come over here and there's another document in here, another FD-1023 from April 2020. The document's an interview with a source who expressed concern that Jeffrey Epstein was an Israeli spy. The source said Steve Bannon and Epstein may have had a business relationship, and Epstein paid Bannon with money from the Israelis. The source referenced cell site simulators used for surveillance and claimed that Bannon may have utilized the technology to get information out of the White House. I'm not telling you what to believe, bro. I only just have this platform called Web that just allows me to compile all applicable information regarding whatever topic I want. And I just ask some simple questions to get all of this information. And this is just simply a synopsis and an analysis of the files that the government had classified prior and then gave to us. Shout out Web, bro. We wouldn't be able to even talk about this stuff if Kevin is a human, Ian Carroll, and the Web team, the buyer team, they created this thing. So now if we get into the same document chain, it reveals that a researcher had built a file with everyone that knew about Epstein and did nothing, and mentioned Operation Mockingbird, like we said. If we come over here, another document, it's the same document? Nope. Another document mentions a massive and complex matrix involving CCP Epstein congressman. It was forwarded to Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, suggesting a connection to Chinese intelligence as well. That's insane. There's so much here, bro, to really think about, bro. Like connected to the cartel, connected to the Rothschild, connected to Israel and Mossad, connected to our politicians here in America. He's a sex trafficker. He's also a pedophile. He was like into scientists and consciousness and like artificial intelligence and DNA and epigenetics and altering the human genome. He was funding vaccine research, all sorts of things, bro. So much to just like digest, homie. It seems as if Epstein genuinely did have his tentacles in all aspects of power and control on the planet. You can agree. Can you just comment, I agree, or 100, or however you want to affirm that you agree? Because it just seems that as we keep reading this, that it's obvious to me, bro, that like this shit's way darker and deeper and way connected into every single aspect of the human life on this planet. It's in every fucking country, every continent, every government, bro. So if we get into the victims, what control actually looked like, bro. Behind the geopolitical intrigue, the documents contain the victims' accounts of what Epstein's control actually meant in practice. One victim, abused over several years, starting at 18, was brought into massages to participate in sexual acts with other girls. Epstein controlled every aspect of her life, her physical appearance, and her clothing. This control included forcing multiple plastic surgeries, forcing BDSM, referring to her as a sex slave, choking her, and throwing her down a set of stairs. We have another document that says, another victim was drugged with heroin and ecstasy in her early teens. Her groomer told her that it was a contest to see which of the girls would be noticed by Epstein. That's fucking disgusting, bro. That's disgusting, bro. Oh, man. O'Malley. The FBI's own criminal complaint in 2019. New York case describes victims as young as 14 being told to partially or fully undress for massages that escalated to Epstein groping them digitally, penetrating them. How can you do that digitally? And then self-pleasuring in front of them. He used sex toys. He paid them $200 to $1,000 in cash. It's fucking so sad, bro. Oh, it makes me angry, bro. Here's what was never investigated, bro. The recordings are in the Cayman Islands, bro. The tipster that mailed them to a lawyer, which was Alan Dershowitz, supposedly is what they said, right? The FBI intake was logged the same day, but there was no follow-up on the documents, no evidence of the recordings ever being received. A body that is allegedly buried at a specific location on a golf course of a former and future president. There was no warrant, there was no search, there was no field interview, but the file was submitted to the government. There was a blanket immunity provision where any potential co-conspirators, like we said before, his sweetheart deal wasn't just about the people involved, about everyone that has been, was then, and will ever be, implying that it's never going to end, bro. It's still going on to this day, right now. And if those people get arrested, they fall under this blanket immunity plea for any potential co-conspirator. Right there, bro. It even included Alan Dershowitz, bro, who negotiated the plea deal. It includes Kellen, who was a lieutenant in Epstein's army, just like Maxwell was, just like Leslie Groff was, bro. And then we have to talk about the connection to the Rothschilds, bro. Epstein was placing women inside of the Rothschilds' family personal staff in October of 2013, 7 years after his first arrest, 2 years after his release from jail. He was coordinating meetings between Ariana de Rothschild and Ehud Barak, Larry Summers, Woody Allen, and Joshua Ramo. He was sharing intelligence about financial scandals, including the Rothschild entities, and directing press campaigns against them. And then you have to talk about Epstein being a member of the Trilateral Commission, the Council of Foreign Relations, that he kept a black book that doubled as an organizational chart of his operations. He received proposals for like a new Rosicrucianism, which is like basically reviving some ancient occult order combined with the private intelligence agency. And then he kept a copy of that on his desk, the Lolita on his nightstand, and a stuffed elephant in his apartment in Paris. And then he had so many connections to Israel and the Mossad and Putin's financial network, the Sinaloa cartel, the hacker that was the first hacker to get into BlackBerry and iOS. It just seems so crazy to me, bro. It just seems so hard to comprehend that with the information that the government provided us so that we could piece this together, that I don't think they really expected us to be able to piece this together like this. I don't think that when they released the files that Ian Carroll and Kevin is a Human and the people who created Web, I don't think they thought that someone would be able to do that. I don't think they anticipated the power of AI and coding when it comes to like building platforms and integrating the AI systems that we already have to actually help humans. Because in my personal opinion, bro, Web, that's a plus for Team Human, bro. Because without it, do you know how long it would take to go through all of the files to be able to even come up with all of these connections, bro? I appreciate you for being here. Till next time, I love you, Team Human.